Welcome back, guys. This is my Gregory Isaacs special. These are a series of periodic videos I'll do once in a while, spotlighting a particular person or artist in reggae, which gives me a bit of a chance to shine a bit of a focus on somebody that might not be as well known to anybody that's not as deep into reggae, and allows me to show some things from my collection. So today I'll be talking about Gregory Isaacs. Gregory is one of the all-time biggest figures in reggae. He's Bob Marley, and Dennis Brown are almost like a trinity of the biggest singers in reggae. If Bob Marley is the king of reggae, Dennis Brown is often called the crown prince, and then Gregory was right in there, kind of as almost as a dark horse in one sense, in the sense that he was kind of the bad boy, had some brushes with the law and well-known troubles like that. But Gregory was born in 1951 in Kingston, Jamaica. Started recording in the late 60s. His success did not come easy to him. He joined up with a couple of other guys and formed a vocal trio called the Concords. Didn't really take off too well, so by 1970-ish the group had broken up. He formed his own label called African Museum with another singer called Errol Dunkley as a way to have his own label, his own control over his own music, while he continued to record for various producers and finance his operations that way through all these gigs and cutting records for various people. Started recording for a producer called Phil Pratt, and eventually notched up his first major hit called All I Have Is Love. This is the Jamaican 7-inch Sounds United label. This was, I think, #1 in Jamaica, his first one. Soon after that, he started working with a producer called Alvin Gigi Ranglin in the early 70s. Put out his debut album. This is a reissue. I'll be showing you a variety of formats here to give you a fuller sense of the picture of his career. In Person. This has appeared in various editions. This one is on the Sunspot label out of the UK. Has a lot of his hits for Alvin Ranglin. Love Is Overdue was another one of his major hits as he continued his steady climb to the top. He put out 2 albums called The Best of Gregory Isaacs with Alvin Ranglin. This is volume 1. It's from the late 70s, I believe. And these collected various singles. That's on the GG's label. Got sound markings on there from the sound system it belonged to. So he put 2 volumes out there. I only have the first, or which one was that? That's volume 2 on vinyl. I don't have volume 1, but both of them were compiled on CD on Heartbeat Records in 1992. Best of volume 1 and 2. Kind of got all his early hits for Alvin Ranglin on there. And one of his early hits on his African Museum was Top 10. This is the 12-inch disco single. Again, sound markings on there. As he continued on, his early singles, he hadn't quite settled into his recognizable style. Gregory Isaacs didn't quite have the vocal richness or range that somebody like Dennis Brown would have. He had a bit of a nasal timbre to his voice, but he was a master at, once he found his groove, his voice became very distinctive. You can hear right away when it's a Gregory Isaacs tune from the first notes. And he was also a master at kind of putting forth a persona on record or a character that he would play in his songs. Often in his early work, he's kind of portraying himself as the wounded romantic, the lonely lover he's sometimes called, which was the title of one of his LPs. He was a man of many nicknames. But as he moved on into self-production, he put out Extra Classic LP. I believe this is his 3rd album. This is on the Echo label. And this one was a giant leap forward for him. He's got Mr. Cop on here, which we recorded at the Black Ark studio with Lee Perry. And other than that, all self-productions. and getting more into a roots and culture, Rastafarian influenced phase here. Rasta Business, Black Against Black, the title track, which is more of a love song, and The Great My Religion, which there's a fantastic DJ version of that by Dr. Elementato. So continued on, his star was on the rise through this phase of the 70s. Next up, there was also a very nice Trojan CD version of Extra Classic, which includes a whole disc of, or not a whole disc, but extra dub versions of all those songs. Next up was the classic Mr. Isaacs album. This is a Canadian press on Micron. Very simple, plain cover here. Front and back are exactly the same, just the title and the track listing. And this is probably one of his finest albums of all time. You've got, right from the get-go, you've got songs in a strictly cultural mood like Sacrifice, Storm, and then he does a couple of love songs and cover versions of Storybook Children and The Temptations' Get Ready in kind of a slowed down, almost funky style. But the real core of this album is a suite of very roots and culture songs. And one track on here was produced by 90 The Observer. It's called Slave Master. It appeared on the soundtrack for the Rockers movie, in which Gregory appeared, playing kind of a version of himself as kind of a street hustler, which was a role I'm sure he was not unfamiliar with in real life. And that song has kind of a lyric that just kind of sums him up at this phase of his career. It goes, "Every time I hear the music and I move my hip, Slave Master comes around and spends time with his whip," which has both the socio-political and the cultural element with the sensual side, which just sums him up to a T at this point. Following the success of those last two albums, Extra Classic and Mr. Isaacs, he signed a deal with Virgin Records in the UK, who were getting big into the reggae market at this time, in the mid to late 70s. He released two albums for them. This one is called Soon Forward, and that is on Virgin. And it's continuing in very cultural mood here. Well, mix of cultural and the love songs. Gregory, kind of almost a founding father or progenitor of what later became known as lovers rock, which is just a reggae kind of roots rhythm with love song lyrics, which became very popular in England. And by the way, that Mr. Isaacs album was also reissued on Blood and Fire, the esteemed UK label. This is from 2001. Now, this other album for Virgin I do not have on vinyl, but it is The Cool Ruler, which gave him one of his enduring nicknames. And this has songs like Native Woman, John Public, Uncle Joe, a cover of Dennis Brown's Created by the Father. Although for my mind, the Soon Forward album is the finer of the two. Now, dubs to the Cool Ruler album appeared on this one, Slum in Dub. This was reissued very recently. This is still out right now. I think I showed this in an earlier vinyl update video. It's on the Burning Sounds label. As 70s came to an end, the early 80s came along, the Gregory started moving into a different phase of his career. Well, first up, I'll show this one. It's a duets album. He did a number of these kind of duets albums. It's not really strictly duets. Gregory Isaacs meets Ronnie Davis, who is another singer on Plant Music label. Really, it's just one side of songs from Gregory and one from Ronnie Davis. Kind of a clever way to repackage some loose singles. But one song on here is called Mr. Know-It-All. And speaking of the Blood and Fire label, they went out of business in the early to mid-2000s. There was almost a revival of them a couple of years ago, 2014, and they were supposed to come out with some new issues, but all that ever ended up surfacing was this 12-inch for Record Store Day in 2014, and it's a 12-inch version of Gregory Isaacs' Mr. Know-It-All. Blood and Fire. Nice to have that one. A bunch of the original Blood and Fire crew have just kind of reunited on Facebook recently. The original forum members. As I was saying, the early 80s, the sound of reggae was changing, and Gregory moved along with it. Started working with the Roots Radix Band, who were the crack session band at the time and would dominate the first half of the 80s. He recorded a few albums with them. Kind of the first of them was called The Lonely Lover. It's on African Museum. Again, it's got sound markings from being played on a sound system, which was basically a large mobile disco and would be kind of the almost the de facto radio for this kind of music. And The Lonely Lover, again, one of his enduring nicknames. But things really kicked into gear for Gregory with the release of this album, Night Nurse. This is 1982, appeared on Island Records. Title track, a massive, massive hit for him. And the whole album just kind of a different sound for the Roots Radics at this time. They were cutting very hard, very militant dancehall and roots rhythms for various producers, especially Henry Laws at this time. For Gregory Isaacs, they kind of mellowed it out a little bit. He just locked into a groove with them just really nicely. They worked really well together. They brought in Wally Badarou to kind of sweeten things up for the international audience. Title track was a massive hit. Unfortunately, Gregory could not fully capitalize on it. He was in jail in Kingston at the time on illegal firearm possession charges. Was not the first of his incarcerations. He had kind of a history of run-ins with the law through his life. When he got out, well, he also had the More Gregory album was on all the run in this series. Don't have that on vinyl. And finally, he put out Out Day, or Out There. The title track is a reference to his release from prison on Mango, imprint of Island Records. That was the end of that phase of his career, but he put out, I just showed this in a recent video, I've just picked this up pretty recently, Live at the Academy, a legendary show at the height of his popularity in this phase. And the typical sort of very dapper outfits he would wear on stage. Classic show on Kingdom Records. John, you might get a kick out of this. I think you're from Birmingham. This is one I found many, many years ago in a record store in Vancouver here. They got a small row of Reggae 12-inch singles in, very cheap. Some were as little as like 99 cents up to about $8 or $9 for one or two of the more expensive ones. This is many years ago now. They wouldn't be going for that now. But one of them was a Gregory single called Drifting Away on African Museum. This is from 1984. And it's from Don Christie Records, Birmingham. Don't know if you've ever heard of it. Kind of a cool one to find. Gregory had as well as brushes with the law for various offenses. He had a notorious long-standing habit of substance abuse habit, which he was pretty open about in later years. As the 80s progressed, he worked with producers like Tapazuki and put out a single called Hard Drugs, fairly autobiographical. He was pretty open that that was the biggest mistake of his life. Another one, One Man Against the World. Again, reinforcing this kind of loner persona he had on record. He worked with, as the reggae sound changed in the mid-80s to a more computerized digital sound, they called it. A lot of veteran singers had trouble adjusting to this new, more computerized sound. Gregory fared better than others. Scored a massive hit in the late 80s with producer Augustus Gussie Clarke called Rumors, which led to a number of versions. That rhythm, very popular, very classic song. Went on to work with the great producer King Tubby. King Tubby was making forays after a bit of a time off building his new studio. He was moving into digital reggae production as well. This is a compilation called Gilbert. It's not really Gregory Isaacs. It's a various artists. Gregory does the lead-off track. It's kind of celebrating the, or not celebrating, but commenting on Hurricane Gilbert that had ravaged Jamaica. This is from 1988. It is on King Tubby's Firehouse label. And the tune from it is called What a Disaster, which Gregory does, along with various other artists tackling the same subject. As the 90s went on, Gregory, well, first of all, he put out a whole album with King Tubby, probably his last classic album. This is called Warning, from about same period, 88, 89-ish. That's for King Tubby's. You can tell his voice is kind of starting to fail here. By then, the years of substance abuse were starting to affect him. He lost some teeth, severely affected his ability to sing, continued working, continued performing, but no longer at kind of the level he was at in previous decades. Finally, in 2010, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, kept working pretty much right up until the end, but passed away that year. And as with Dennis Brown, reportedly a discography in the hundreds of albums, as well as countless singles. And I ended my Dennis video with one of my favorite songs by him, so I'll do the same for Gregory. I saw the great 70s DJ Big Youth was on Facebook recently and said that this was his favorite song by Gregory. So if it's good enough for Big Youth, it's good enough for me. This is Sunday Morning. Gregory Isaacs. That's on Bunny Wailer's Solomonic label, or D-A-N-C-S on here, Dance. So that is Gregory Isaacs for you. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll keep bringing you more stuff as time goes on. Cheers, guys.